for another edition of the Don't Get Mad, Get Evidence Roundtable. Joining me, as always, we've got Pipeline Audio from Hawaii and Mr. Ethan Weiner, formerly from the Real Traps Corporation, creator of Real Traps, that is. How's it going, guys? Thrilled to have you on here once again. This one's going to be a real lot of fun. How's it going?
Going great.
Aaron doesn't look impressed.
No, I'm looking forward to Ethan getting your channel shut down over the next subject.
Oh, this is going to be great. Yeah, in case you couldn't tell, I used to sing in a metal band, so that's where the sustain comes from. But
yeah, he was challenging the length for Hallowed Be Thy Name, running low.
Yeah, I don't quite have Bruce's pipes, but I'll take second place when that comes along. But yes, today we're going to talk about cable, because that comes up quite often. You need to spend this money on cable, you need to spend that money on cable. We talked about speaker cables there last episode, and the short version is just get the cheapest shit you can find. If you're doing an at-home installation, you want to run speaker cable, go get some Romex from your Home Depot. It's going to be great.
If in doubt, check a chart that will tell you the length versus what thickness you need. And the car stereo guys figured this out years ago. Yeah. It's not rocket science.
It's like lamp cord is amazing. It's dirt cheap and works wonderful if you're like in a portable installation or you're hooking up PA speakers and stuff like that. You don't want to drop hundreds and hundreds of dollars on speaker cable. Just go get some lamp cord or an extension cord and chop the ends off and use that. It does the thing, and it does it quite well. But today we're going to talk about mic cable and guitar cable, because there's an awful lot of snake oil out there. I've certainly had offers from many companies over the years offering, for sponsorships on my show. Hey, use this kind of cable, use that kind of cable. And I've always kind of been like, that's a really nice offer, but I got to call bullshit on this because you're not doing anything that proves anything to me. Go!
Well, shall I start? It's funny you mentioned about the sponsors. A friend of mine who's actually local here in New Milford, Connecticut, is a columnist for Stereophile magazine.
Okay.
And he's one of the very few, maybe the only, sane people at that entire magazine. And he told me years ago he will not review wires of any kind. He just won't do it because it's so dishonest. But, wire quality matters. Obviously, durability, how well soldered the connector ends are. You don't want the thing to fall apart. You don't want bad connections. You don't want, noise and stuff because it's not soldered well. In fact, if it's really bad solder, it could actually add distortion. But, a competent wire, what matters let's start with guitar wires. They're a little simpler than mic wires because it's just a single conductor inside the shield. Okay. The only thing that really matters is the capacitance of the wire. There's no real voltage going through there. There's no real amount of current. Literally microamps of current. So all that matters is the capacitance. And there's two kinds of guitars and also basses, electric basses, and also Fender Rhodes pianos, the passive ones that the old original ones, old school had, like guitar kind of pickup inside and no active electronics.
Okay.
So, with passive guitars and passive basses, they cannot drive a lot of capacitance. It acts like a short circuit to the signal at high frequencies. So capacitance matters, and wire capacitance is, 10 picofarads per foot to 50 or even more per foot. So that does matter. It doesn't matter a lot until you get to 15, 20 feet. I don't even think you can buy a guitar wire more than 20 feet. Right. And you don't really care what happens at 20 kilohertz with a guitar. What's the highest frequency that actually matters with a guitar? 5 kilohertz, 6 or 7, maybe for a really tinny kind of effect. But that's the only thing that matters besides the quality of the construction is the capacitance. You were also asking before we went live here about gold-plated versus silver-plated.
Yeah, that was a question that came up on my channel here, and it's like, I've always just like, what, are you fucking serious?
Right. Well, the contacts, the plating can have an effect. If it's tin plated, it can tarnish. Silver tarnishes.
Okay. And
can be a problem if it tarnishes really bad, if it turns black.
So we're talking about resistance here. We're not talking about anything else. It's not going to.
No. There's several factors in construction wise where the metallurgy matters, and anybody who's ever had to fix an AKG headphone will tell you that silver is not fun.
Okay.
I'll take copper and gold and all that stuff, but silver can be unfun to solder.
Okay.
Right. Well, and copper tarnishes too and gets a coating. And what happens, it's not just resistance, which wouldn't matter so much, but it also can turn into a diode.
Oh,
and that adds distortion. It passes the plus more than the minus, or the minus more than the plus, or it inhibits both of them with a gap. So nothing happens until you get to like 5 millivolts. Nothing gets through, and then all of a sudden it jumps through. You've probably seen sometimes where a connection will be bad, and you wiggle it. It'll be spitty sounding, sputtering, and you wiggle it, and all of a sudden it comes through. Sure. Or you turn up the volume. That's actually a better example.
Yep.
You turn up the volume, and all of a sudden it starts coming through. So tarnish can be a problem, but the standard connector plating for pretty much every connector is nickel. And those things are fine. I have connectors in my basement, brand new connectors I bought like 40 years ago, 1/4-inch guitar plugs. They're nickel plated, and they look absolutely brand new. They've just been sitting in a pull-out plastic drawer, and they're absolutely fine. The solder connections are fine. The whole thing looks absolutely brand new, like it just came out of shrink wrap. So sometimes dissimilar metals can be a problem. If you have gold versus tin or something, can also oxidize and become a diode. So with gold is great, but it's not critical. It's not really any better than nickel versus nickel. They use gold on PC memory cards and edge connectors and stuff, where sometimes tiny bits, milliohms of resistance can be a factor. Back, I mentioned in the last episode, I had built and owned for a number of years the largest recording studio in Connecticut, and we had an MCI 16-track, and it had relays to switch the record. It was a 16-track 2-inch machine, and it had relays with gold-plated contacts to switch the record head, either to be a record head or to be a playback head when you're doing cell sync overdubs. And a tiny bit of resistance in the playback head, these are again, microvolts of electricity, can be a factor. So they use gold-plated relays, the contacts, the things that actually touch each other.
Right.
So gold matters for some things, but it doesn't matter with audio. Nickel is fine. So it's the capacitance, and I don't mean to belabor this, but I want to be perfectly clear.
Right, and that's what I said. I remember reading an article. It was a shoot-up between a bunch of different guitar cables in like Guitar World magazine, somewhere at the end of the 90s or the early 2000s. I think it was in the 90s. And George L's one of them hands down, and so I went out and bought one of these in the early 2000s. This guitar cable's wound up on pretty much every record I've ever done. It's never caused me any problems.
Yeah, it's the thinnest cable you can get too. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's really thin. It's like a coax type cable, but it's got very, very solid connectors. And nobody's ever bitched. That's for sure. All my guitars are solderless,
right?
Yep. So there you go. I mean, that was a good investment in terms of cable. I mean, low capacitance, great. But
right.
I think that's about it, really.
Well, no, wait, no, there's more.
Okay.
So now some guitars and basses and electric pianos are active.
Yes.
And have electronics. In that case, the capacitance probably doesn't matter unless you're talking 50 feet, 100 feet. Okay. And it depends on the capability of the output. If it has a headphone output can actually provide power like a power amp. So you should be able to drive even 100 feet of regular guitar type wire, single conductor wire from active electronics.
Right.
But it is a factor with passive electronics. And then so I just wanted to add that last part about the guitar cables and bass cables. And,
sure.
But then with microphones also put out very small voltages. I mean, if you scream into an RE20, I think you get like a couple of millivolts, thousandths of a volt. But the output impedance is pretty low. I think it's a couple hundred ohms. I think it's technically quoted as 150 ohms. And ribbon mics are even lower, though they have a transformer. But so that can drive 100 feet of standard XLR wire, no problem. I mean, that's typical in big $1 million studios. It could be 100 feet from the far drum corner in the live room back to the preamp inputs on the console. And a passive dynamic mic can drive that okay. Condenser mics can drive that too, unless the electronics are incompetent. In the last episode, we were talking about cheap mics with incompetent electronics.
Yeah,
so you don't know. But what you would lose would be high frequencies, and maybe you would get some distortion. because the capacitance becomes a low impedance. It's harder to drive, and if the electronics can't provide enough current to drive that capacitance, you not only lose highs, but you also can increase the distortion of the output amps. But typically, that's not a problem with competent wires. So the upshot, which I know is where you're aiming this discussion to go to, is there's no need to spend $100 on, a 20-foot wire of any type, signal, line level wire.
Sure, as long as the connectors are good, yeah, why bother? I just don't get it. It's like one particular brand's better than the next. I think it really just comes down to hardiness and longevity, as opposed to,
right.
One's going to magically make your mic sound better than the next one.
Exactly. There is no magic. There's no magic in any of this.
Now, okay, great, because I did want to discuss that. Okay, so that's cool. Yeah, I thought I had the cable thing figured out quite a while. Yeah, going back on, what was it? Shit. What? No. There was a place on the
more in the cables, I think.
Well, I was going to say there was a place I got all my studio cabling on the East Coast. What the hell was the name of that place? Where the hell was this? I don't even think the place is there anymore. And I found this really thin and really very economical mic cable that I did all my studio wiring with back in 2003. It was called StarTech or something like that. And it was really nice stuff. And apparently they wired up, Skywalker Sound used this stuff for their live rig and stuff too. And I did all the cabling by myself, just custom runs and all that shit. It was fucking fantastic to work with. It was about a quarter of the price of Mogami. You know what I mean? No. So it was pretty good. I think the only advantage on Mogami is you get twice the amount of connections or something like that in case one fails. But
you're talking about Star Quad cable?
Yeah.
Star Quad.
The Canary one?
Yeah.
Well, the Star Quad is different. Yeah, there's 4 connectors. There's 2 sets. And the way it's built inside, they wind it, one clockwise, one counterclockwise, however they do it.
Okay.
So any hum that gets through the shield, if it's near AC power wires and stuff.
Right.
But even that is not necessary.
Sure.
I did a test of that with a 600-watt halogen light wound up together right next to a mic wire. I actually wound them make a transformer to couple and turned the lights on and off, and there was and turned the preamp gain in my mixer all the way up.
Yep.
And there was no hum pickup at all, just with regular old mic wire. So
there you go.
You probably don't need that either.
Okay, great. Okay, now something I've gotten into over the last year, I was going to bring up. This is also one of my very favorite dirt cheap pieces of gear to use, and I'm actually going through it right now. What you guys are hearing, I'm going into my Octava MC012 up here, into the board, and then line level out of my converters to my Sony camera. That's going into an XLR on there, but it's going over this Cat 5e shielded. With the shield, and this stuff is fantastic. This is the greatest, cheapest, most awesome snake cable you're ever going to get. It's got 4 channels if you use it as analog, and I'm using one of these. And so many people have a hard time wrapping their head around it. This is a Cat 5 to XLR Breakout. Okay, completely analog. And I've showed this to a few people. They're like, "So what is that? Like Dante?" No, it's analog. But what sample rate do you run at? It's analog. It's 4 channels of analog, and if you get the shielded stuff, with a little silver connector here, you can run phantom power on it as well. And I've got this stuff everywhere. It's cleaned up my room, and it's just made everything so easy to get 4 channels anywhere really fast, real efficiently. And it's great. Like I said, I've got the Cat 5 going here because I've actually got 4 channels going to my camera right now coming out of my board here. So if I'm doing guitar demos or whatnot, I've got my monologue channel, plus I'm playing back whatever is coming out of my DAW as well as a stereo channel. So for video production, that's really sped up my whole workflow and whatnot. But this stuff, and that's the thing, I've mentioned it to so many people, they're like, huh? Other guys way higher up the chain on me, and they're like, that's going to sound like shit. And I'm like, really? Well, how? And, just get the blank stares back. Like, no, this stuff is great. It's quad twisted pair. So everything's twisted at a different ratio. So the noise rejection is phenomenal. You don't get any. And you can run this stuff forever. And you can run it for 1,000 feet before you actually start picking up any noise or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing with that stuff. So I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, Furman came out with those personal headphone monitoring systems.
Okay.
And they used the Cat 5 to do it.
Okay.
And there was so much incredible pushback because
you can't do that.
Yeah. The lengths were pretty insane. And, when we're talking about cables and stuff, that's a thing. Like, I care about, is it French braided or not? I think there's some evidence that French braid is a little bit stronger for like really intense applications or whatever when you're breaking them all the time. But man, it's impossible to I hate soldering that stuff. The ease of solder, like with gold or copper compared to some of these other things, the longevity, I guess, like Ethan was talking. Well, I used to build Patchbays for all kinds of studios, and when it comes to like Gepco and Mogami, they have that easy ID system where not just the outside of the cable says what it is, but just looking at the inside of the cable, they're color coded a certain way that you can actually know what channel you're on.
Right.
Because when you're dealing with those TT Patchbays, you have 4 different chunks of I got each, right?
I got 96 shells right over here. Yeah. So
and so you're talking about 96 points, and you need to know what ID that is, what channel you're working on, and you can tell with these. It was always worth it to me to pay the extra money, which wasn't much, if you really needed that easy ID system. And then the thing that puts the lie to all this crap is, and I'll tell you, there's plenty of studios. I don't know if they want me to say the name of it because, the path that your microphone went to before it reached the studio. All these guys, they come to the studio and they bring like this 2-foot cable, and they're like, I'm going to put my mic right next to the mic preamp with this 2-foot cable. We're talking, I don't know if we're talking miles, but we're talking a lot of feet of cable, especially if you're patching something in before that thing actually gets between your microphone and whatever that eventual recording device is, the interface to the tape machine.
Right.
You could talk about, how long the cabling run was in the wall from the microphone. Okay, never mind the giant long cables. What if those Neumanns used to come with like 50 or 80 foot cables or whatever to the power supply? You go from there, you're whatever. Let's just say it's 40 feet. 40 feet to the power supply, then the power supply to the mic snake panel, mic panel, whatever. That panel going through the whole studio back to your control room into the patch bay, and then you take that patch bay plug and plug that into your mic preamp rack, which is again back out in a million feet of cable and stuff. It was so long before it got to the tape recorder input that all these purists that are out talking on these forums, they'd be crying if they knew how long this stuff was. I mean, this is the type of length that you measure your car's speed at. This is we're talking at least a quarter mile for some of this stuff.
Right?
It's insane.
Anyway, but yeah, like I said, I did an install last year with this, and it's been fantastic. Like I said, I used to have, mic cable strewn all over my drum room because I always had, 12, 14 mics going and whatnot. Now I've got 3 little breakouts just situated around my drum set, and then I've got little 3-foot cable wires, and then everything's just on 3 of these going back to the board. So there's like, that's 12 channels, 16 if I need them. And it's, like I said, it's great because these are not expensive cables, and they're just super efficient way of doing things. And that's what I tell anybody who's wiring up a home studio these days. I was just at a facility in New York or in Las Vegas that's being built, and they're wiring it up the traditional way. And I'm like, do yourself a favor, run some Cat 5 network cable, like run 12 of those. And you're going to thank me because you can run everything on those, though. And that's the thing. You're not just limited to audio cable. It's obviously you can run computer network cable, but you can also run HDMI video as well. And
right. You might, I would suggest Cat 6, pay a little more, get the latest and greatest, capability.
Okay. Yeah, probably. Yeah. I'd be like Cat 5e what do I got right here? Is this Cat 5e? This is Cat 6. Well, there you go. Huh? There you
Right. Well, I have something similar. I understand what yours is really just buffer amplifiers, little power amplifiers. Like I was saying before, a headphone output from a synthesizer can probably drive 50 feet, no problem. So that's, I think, the idea behind that. I have, in my home theater, I needed a 50-foot wire HDMI from my receiver in the front to a projector in the back. So I bought one of those. It's the same kind of thing. It's HDMI to Cat 5.
Okay.
And then you run this wire because HDMI wires don't work that well when you get that long.
Yeah, fair enough.
It wasn't expensive. It was $150, something like that, for a sender and a receiver. So it's the same idea, and it's one little wire and does everything.
Yeah, just want to be clear though. I mean, like that thing. Yeah, you can run HDMI and whatnot, but this works great for mic cable as well. Like I said, I run my drums over this, and no problem at all. No problem running phantom power. It works. It works great. I've got a lot of pushback from a lot of people about that, but some people do listen. I went to go visit Lewitt last summer in Vienna and walked into their studio. They had just built just this gorgeous place, and they had these little Thomann breakouts all over the place. So I'm like, somebody was listening. Yeah, they're like, this stuff's great. So there you go. And that's cool. That's somebody using the technology not as intended, but got a great result regardless. Tony Kazoob, who used to be at Ward Beck Systems in Toronto, he was the one who pushed me into this. He was like, dude, you got to check this stuff out. And I'm like, again, the first thing I said, what is that, digital? No, it's analog. Like, and just it takes a couple minutes for that to sink it. What? You want to run analog over, yeah, but when you think about it, the stuff's designed to run low-level signals for great lengths without any interference. So it really does make a lot of sense in that respect, once you actually consider what the cable was designed for originally.
Are you running the Snake?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some other ones.
$28.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Like they're cheap, man. They're real cheap.
Oh.
You just get male and female versions. And then you can get them. You can get them with the. You can get them with the pigtails and without. So depending on what you want. Yeah,
but that requires
$28. You can't even buy the connectors for that. Man.
Yeah, exactly.
This is crazy.
But Glenn, that requires power. You have to power them, right?
No,
I wouldn't think so.
nope, no power.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I thought there was like an amplifier inside the
No,
sender.
they're completely passive. So yeah, like I said, you run your mic cable on them, no problem at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really cleaned up my room and just made life a whole lot easier when it comes to doing big arrays of microphones on drums and whatnot. Because now I've got everything into little quad setups. It's like, so I'll bring one out. One's like my 2 overheads and 2 rack toms. Then I got another one going to like two kick mics and then a floor tom, that kind of stuff. And then I've got snare top, bottom, hi hat on another one, kind of thing. And then 2 rooms. And and it works fantastic. I've got another one going out to a guitar cabinet. So if I want to put 4 mics on a guitar cabinet, there I go. And everything just patches in via Cat 5. It is great. So like next studio I build, I don't even know if I'm going to put traditional mic cables in because this stuff works so well. I'm probably just going to run network cable. It's so easy to work with. And really, once you learn how to do it, making the ends for the network patches isn't too difficult either.
Yeah, they have I'm looking on Tallman's site right now. They have one that's called the 3FB, and it's a panel mount female XLR. Like I would just stick these things on the wall and be done with it. This is actually I might just clean up my vocal booth with this thing. This is
the 3FB. What is that? I want to see this now. Hopefully my phone didn't die. Jeez, let's see what we got here. Thomann 3FB.
Yeah, I figure if I put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 of these things together by my drum set, I would have my whole big room.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, exactly. That doesn't have the pigtails or anything like that. But you are going to have to run Cat 5.
Yeah.
Between your rooms or whatever. That's what I had to do. I had to do a bit of drilling to get the stuff going, but it was definitely worth the investment and the time to do it.
It's a nice panel anyway. Like you could put this on the floor and not worry about stepping on it so much. But I'd stick them on the walls and be done with it. This is nice.
Yeah, well, like I said, the stuff's rock solid. I've got some ones from Amazon called Lyx, Lyx, and I had one fail on me not too long ago. I was trying to hunt down. I just put a new preamp in. Yeah, Ethan will love this. It's a API style, but with a vacuum tube in it. It's from Stam Audio, so it's like that. You can run as a fuzz pedal. So I will say that. But I'm like, I had a dead channel, like trying to figure out what the fuck happened. And yeah, this Lyx one, the box failed for whatever reason. So I had some Ward Beck breakouts kicking around. So I just swapped it out and away we go. But when these things are only $30. The ones from Thomann, the only thing I liked more about the Lyx was they had like 6-foot cable instead of 3-foot or 2.5 or however long this is. I feel this one isn't quite long enough. I wish they were about yay long like the Lyx stuff, but the Lyx ones use very, very thin cables. So there is a question of longevity. So the Snake's probably going to be a little more robust for you.
Ooh, yeah, that's a thing. Never mind the cable. When we're talking the connectors, I know people go fanatical on connectors, but I have found a lot of cheap XLR connectors, the females. Not so much the males. The males all seem to work, even though they're not always soldered all that well. But the super cheapest of the XLR female sometimes
get left in the XLR connector.
No.
I've had that happen.
Too.
Oh yeah, pull up. Oh
man.
shit.
No, that's the worst. That's embarrassing. But a lot of the female holes are too big, and they don't connect well. And you can go in there and squeeze them and stuff. And before we get
I'm trying really hard not to get demonetized right now.
But you can crimp them a little bit and bring them back to life. But sometimes that material is so thin that even when you try and do that, they just can't hold on. But it's hard. I see cheap imitation Neutrik out there that are super strong, and I couldn't ever complain about them. So I don't even know if it's a thing anymore. But I do remember when Amazon first came out, there were some cheaper mic cables that where the female end just couldn't hold on.
Fair enough. Okay, so yeah, that's it about a mic cable. So in other words, don't waste your money. Get something decent. Don't get something stupid expensive, because it's not going to magically make your stuff sound better. That being said, I did want to ask you guys about some of your favorite cheap gear, because yeah, Ethan had touched on this, the Audio-Technica AT2020, which I'm going to have a demo on. I don't know if it's going to be out by the time this episode airs, but I do want to put this thing through a review process and see what we can get out of it, because I'm always down for awesome dirt cheap gear. I was going to say, what's some of your other favorite really cheap gear? Like let's keep, so let's say, what's your top three?
I can tell you mine.
Yeah,
okay.
You go first.
All right. I don't know if you can see this one.
No, what is that? The Behringer cable tester?
Yes, the Behringer CT100, and I have one of the old Whirlwind or whoever made it, the Cable Doctor from way back in the day, from the 90s. I still, it's my only piece of gear. I think it's actually my only possession in my life that I've had since the 90s, since my studio days. And that thing works great. It's ancient and old, and this thing is like $40 or something from Behringer, and it will check continuity and polarity, which is big time. It's got a test tone you can run through it.
Oh wow.
And I know this isn't glamorous or whatever, just having testing things. But when you have, we've been doing voiceovers because people don't realize that they come to Hawaii, they don't realize it's a third world country. They come here with all these famous actors and stuff, and they need to do some voiceover. They assume they're going to have a studio to work in, and there really aren't those things here. I have that place. And when you have people like that are on a budget and your cable doesn't work, the last thing you want is to be chasing cables down. So get a hold of something ahead of time. And with that said, one of my favorite top three things is the Weller WLC. This is a $40 soldering iron that any student can get.
I've got the exact same one in my place.
Oh, good.
They're
awesome.
Great. Yes, can confirm.
Yeah.
Awesome piece of gear.
Yeah, that between those two pieces of gear, I'll get most everything done. After that, everything else is a very far third place for me.
Oh wow!
I don't even know, but we do, like, we have all these micro modelers. You have these amp modelers that use so much DSP that just 5 years ago would have cost you a fortune, and now you got the power of these helixes and stuff, and these like $50-$60 little boxes and stuff. And I just don't know that the software's there, but the hardware is certainly there.
Well, what you touched on one there a while back there that was got the fight rhythm, Tony. You were geeking out about that. Who made that one?
Well, one of the ones that I did that with was the amp matcher for Revolver. That was the one where I really was tripping out.
Yeah, I got to do a review on the new Revolver. That's been out for a little bit now, hasn't it?
Yeah, and there's stuff going on with the guy who runs the company now. It's this guy named Scott Meyer.
Okay.
I think Peavey sold him. He broke off from Peavey for the most part, and actually was able to get their name, Audio Media Research,
right,
and use that as his company's name. And he's been pushing it. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm hoping it's not a dead product, but he's not the only one. Even Alex from Audio Assault, he was able to do a matching thing, and I don't think he wants it talked about exactly how the thing works, but he was able to get that same thing, no problem.
Oh, really? Okay. Now, I've been hearing some great stuff come out of Audio Assault as well. You talked to Alex a lot more. What would you say is his best thing to grab right now? Because I really do want to do a video on some of his stuff, because I love his price to performance ratio. What's okay? What would you recommend? I check it.
For me, the one product that I have on his that I know a lot of people hate these kind of devices or plugins or whatever, but he's got an enhancer plugin called Exciter, XCTR, and I use that on so much stuff. And if you had the Aphexes back in the day, or worse, if you had the super hiss generator back in the day, what was the name of that thing? It was the one you used on everybody had it on their stuff.
Oh, BBE.
No, I mean even before that, there's this one where you paid by the minute. You used
That was,
it.
that was the Aphex. That was the Aphex.
That was the Apex,
okay.
yeah.
That was the original Aphex.
The other way around it was the the old Mutt Lang trick, the Dolby noise reduction, where you use the encode only in order to get that treble boost, like that Def Leppard stuff, or a lot of the Desmond Child kind of recordings. You'd hear those just blasting treble. Something going on with Frida, like you really hear it on the guitar and the cymbals and even the vocals on that. Exciter can do that, but for some weird reason, it can do stuff on the low end as well. And I really love that thing.
I was going to say, which one of his amp sims do you think I should be checking out, though? That's what I really wanted to take a look at. That's what you kids really want to hear. Right.
So he had the what's the name of the free amp? There was one that it's using his newer stuff. So I don't know. Can we say this? Alex can capture things, but he's not selling the capturer because people think they own things.
Yeah.
And I would say that really anything he puts out right now, if it says it's the amp, if he hints that it's the amp that you wanted to have, you're probably gonna like it. Like let me see what he's even doing. There was one that we were really on for a while. That he was working on in beta, and it was killer, and it had like every sound you could possibly want, but he's like, I can't put it out this way because we will get in trouble or something. I'm trying to look at it, but it was like a multi effects thing that had an amp, and it had a bunch of other junk in it.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, reamp Studio.
Oh,
so now that thing's $30, but
okay, Reamp Studio. Okay, I remember trying that out years ago. Yeah, I was kind of curious how it'd come along.
Right. So the technology that's used to make that thing, it really can do anything. Okay. And but I'm not sure that he's allowed to do it that way. So he just has it as that Reamp Studio thing right now. And so I know that he's spinning off single things out of it so that he doesn't get nailed.
Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, well, I'll definitely check out some of the Audio Assault stuff, though. I know that's a brand that comes up as a subject quite a bit in some of my comments. So yeah, I'll look into that. Ethan, what do you like? What's your favorite cheap gear?
Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't buy anything. I mean, I really the only thing I've been buying lately is groceries, a lot of electronic parts. I've got several electronic projects that I'm working on. Just spent a couple $100 on surface-mounted parts. I have this tiny a circuit board that holds 200 parts, tiny parts, and so I don't buy audio stuff. I buy tools, but I can tell you my philosophy, which is probably better than, well, what specifically have I bought? You know, I'm a disappointment to the Sweetwater guys. I buy from a bunch of places, but there's always somebody at Sweetwater that gets assigned to you. You buy there once or twice, and you get the call once a year. And, you know, the guy says, well, you know, what are you looking for? I said, I have everything I need. I have a Fender Telecaster. I have a Fender Precision Bass. I have a Yamaha acoustic guitar. I have enough microphones. I have everything I need. I recently overhauled my home theater setup and had to replace an aging, really cheap receiver, and I ended up buying a really expensive one because I wanted to be able to mix 5.1 surround sound in my home theater, which is a different room from where I am now. And none of the cheap receivers have a discrete analog ins and outs, preamp in and out. Okay. So I had to spend more for that. But I can tell you my philosophy used to be buy the cheapest thing that will get the job done. But, you know, there's a lot of cheap crap that's just flimsy. I bought a thing called the Smart Tweezers, and this came up recently. It costs $340. It's basically like a voltometer, but it's a pair of tweezers for measuring tiny surface mount parts. I mean, these things are a sixth the size of a grain of rice.
Okay.
And they have little tiny metallized ends. So these tweezers let you, and it will tell you this is if you drop something on the floor, this is a resistor. It's 0.2% accurate. It can measure capacitance. It can measure other aspects of capacitors, dissipation factor, all this stuff. It was $340, which is really more than I wanted to spend, but I really need it. So a friend of mine who's he's one of my mentors, top EE, said, "Oh, well, you could have bought this one for $100." And I said, "Bill, before I bought this, I actually did some research and found people talking, and the consensus one, the cheap ones aren't very good. They're not made well. The tweezer things don't line up well. One guy said he bent it and got it to work okay after a while. So I decided not to buy the cheapest crap out there. So that's been my philosophy change."
Sure, okay.
That's been my philosophy change over the last year or so, is to buy the second cheapest. I still buy store brands at the supermarket if they have something that's the same as, the usual potato chips. But yeah, I just don't buy any audio gear. I buy a new computer every 4 or 5 years when needed, and the camera I'm using right here is a Sony camera I bought, almost 10 years ago. It's still fine. It's full HD. It does everything that I need. So,
yeah,
sorry.
Fair enough. I mean, that's the thing. I just dropped some serious money on a really nice camera right now. It's got ultimate autofocus. You know what I mean? And it's really nice. It's got 4-channel audio input, but this is the last camera I'm going to buy for the next 10 years, hopefully.
Well, you're a professional.
Exactly. This is my craft, though. Yeah, exactly. So it's this was definitely worth spending the money. I mean, I bought a cheaper camera a little bit earlier, wasn't happy with it, returned it, did a video on it. Everybody at Panasonic watched that video and they weren't too happy with it. But, oh well, too bad. Put out a better product.
But and push them on the fake 29-minute European
that's
colonialization
such bullshit. Yeah, no, Panasonic doesn't do that. Sony doesn't do that. Canon was doing that, and that's just to get around some kind of tax code or something like that in the EU.
And I was like, just let us pay the extra money and just get something that works.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, because the 29-minute limit is complete bullshit. Yeah, so I get that, and it's complete nonsense. But yeah, that was the thing. I need a camera to go to Europe with as well. That's going to be light and not weigh down my bag for a month kind of thing, because I'm going to be living out of a suitcase for quite a bit, and I just want something that works well and isn't going to give me any grief.
Hey, now that Radio Shack's gone, since Ethan's talking about meters, what are we supposed to use for multimeters? Dylan talks tone. He had a couple of videos where he's got an Amazon link for a Innova 3320 digital multimeter, and apparently this one beeps on continuity, which is, I know this is a huge one for me. I know people would come in with flukes and they're like, well, you got to use this meter. I'm like, well, that one doesn't beep when I do a continuity check, so it's useless to me. I'm sure flukes have ones that beep, but all the ones I've ever seen, they didn't do it, and it was always the most popular one to have around the studio. But I'm always fixing things. I need something that beeps if there's a short, And this thing's $30, and I don't know if it's any good. Do you guys have a multimeter you like?
Well, I still have a Radio Shack one I bought.
Yeah, me too.
20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, my Radio Shack one is right here.
Yeah, there you go. I've got a Radio Shack SPL meter, but that's about it.
Well, you know what I have that was really a good purchase and inexpensive. A couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, when I started getting back into electronics, I used to do this in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and now I'm working on more projects. I needed an oscilloscope. Now, I have just a small desk. I don't have room for an oscilloscope. But they have USB oscilloscopes, and there's a bunch of them at various price points. A friend of mine, one of my other mentors, lent me hers, and and it's great. It's called SmartScope. It was $250, and now it's like $200. It came down in price over a few years. It's the size of a pack of cigarettes. It's got 2 inputs. It comes with 1 times and 10 times probes. Really, really nice software. And you get to see a screen. I have a pair of 24-inch LCDs in front of me that I'm looking at now, and which is much better than oscilloscope. It's this particular one is only 8-bit digitization, but if you spend $2,000 on a low-end Tektronix, that's also 8 bits or maybe 10 bits of the A to D converter. So this is really great. It can measure down to a couple of millivolts with the 8 bits converters, and it's really great. I mean, it was a really good purchase, and it takes up hardly any space, and I got a 24-inch screen to see it on.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. I mean, like, dirt cheap studio gear. I mean, like, yeah, you picked out the AT2020. I was gonna say, I got a Drummer DL241, which is like probably my ultimate like bargain basement gear purchase ever.
Well, speaking of Behringer and inexpensive, some of their stuff is fine.
Yep.
But I have a Behringer. It's a hum eliminator.
Yep.
So it's just a pair. It's two transformers in the little metal case. I think it sells for $50 or something, and it's okay, but it's not great. I actually measured the response and distortion at 3 different levels for one of my magazine articles. It's on my website. Okay. And it's not great. Now the really good transformers cost like $120 a piece. For the Jensens. Isomax or something, but a lot of times cheap stuff is good, but sometimes it's not. And I had the same problem with a Eptech hum eliminator. It was fine at low levels, but once you got to a certain volume, so I would crank the playback volume on my little portable small format mixer, all of a sudden it would break up really bad. I don't mean just a little fuzzing, but all of a sudden this horrible cracking sounds. At high levels, it sounded okay at low levels.
Well, so. that funny you mention that, because I'm actually using an Eptech right now, actually for my for 2 of my line levels. The one problem with my Sony camera here is, and I need to do a review piece on this. It's got two inputs which are mic and line level, but the other 2 are mic level only. So I got to take a line level out of here, reduce it down to mic level so I can get it in to channel 3 and 4 here, and I picked up a horrible ground loop. So I hooked up my Eptech hum eliminator, the little 2-channel one with the XLRs and the 1/4 inches, and it works brilliantly. So
it does, but if you send it a couple of volts, put plus 15 dBu through it,
sure. In this case, I'm putting very, very, very small signal through it. Like I said, I'm putting mic level signal through it. So
then it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say it killed the ground loop dead. It really did do the thing. It was supposed to,
they work. Yeah.
Very impressed.
Transformers work.
Yep. Yeah. So that would be actually one of my favorite pieces of gear, actually, for dirt cheap, is the Eptech hum eliminator, because it's definitely saved my ass more than a few times. Yeah.
But are you running?
I have one of those. I never used it, but I have a headphone that's kind of buzzy for some weird reason in the vocal booth, and we can't figure it out.
Try that.
I'm gonna go plug that in and see what happens.
See if it doesn't work all the time, but when it does, you'll know. And it's like, oh shit, I'm so glad I have this thing. So yeah, in this case, it really did save my ass, because I had a horrible ground loop for whatever reason. Because sometimes I'm powering things from different outlets on different circuits here in my control room. Mostly everything's powered off one board here, but a lot of my camera gear is powered over here, so we get a ground loop or something like that. That just cleaned it right up, and so I will give hats off to that. But yeah, I was going to say one of my absolute favorite pieces of gear is the Drummer DL241 dual channel compressor. It's basically the same idea as a DBX. You just have better control over the attack and release time. And I think I picked this up used for like 350 Canadian or something dirt cheap like that. And it's fantastic. Now, the thing they never tell you about the DBXs is they're the exact same compressors that you'll find in the channel strip on an SSL console.
Was like that chip?
It's a DBX chip.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, like you pull an SSL 9000 or whatever, one of the early 80s analog SSL consoles, you pull a card out of there, it'll say DBX right on it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the exact same thing. It's just got a different control circuit around it for attack and release times. Drummer's kind of the same idea, except that you have even finer control over the attack and release times. I used to have a couple of DBX 160s, and I got rid of them for the Drummer. And it was one of the best purchases I ever made. Found out about that on my Discord. There's a good bunch of dudes in there who like trading tips on gear and stuff like that. So that was a really good purchase. I run my kick and snare through that all the time. It's got that, it's got that sound on it, of all those records that we grew up with, because it does things. So yeah, if you're ever in the market for a dirt cheap analog compressor, I would definitely recommend checking that out, because it's 2 channels and completely independently controllable.
The Drummer DS201 may have been most of the inspiration for Regate back in the day. You know, just add a hold control to it and a look ahead, and you're pretty much there.
No
Yeah,
shit.
that was a studio workworkhorse for me, so I always had that around back in the day.
Really? Oh, wow. Small world. Because honestly, that's like my favorite gate, like one of my favorite gates ever is the Rhea gate. Until, you know, AIX came out with the freaking, the multiband gate, because that's just insane. But, yeah, the Rhea gate, especially the look-at controls on that were just phenomenal. I mean, like, I can't believe that actually shipped with the freaking, with the DAW. I'm like, this is just way too powerful. Use that, a lot.
That piece of gear, like, really helped, especially for a lot of the students we had around this, until having that external key source really let them understand things. And it made so many of them into musicians. Like, a lot of people, they weren't into metal. They came to the school because they just wanted to record, and they were more into electronica and stuff. And these guys were figuring out that if they put something in the key input, they could, like, run a guitar through it and have the drums pop the guitars in and out and stuff. And they did so many creative, cool things with that, you know, I would want to see that gate live on forever. You know,
Right on.
The old drummer gates were just unreal.
Yeah, well, like I said, the same thing with the compressor. It just sounds phenomenal. You've been hearing it on my show for the last year and a half. Anytime I throw to a full mix, that's what the kick and snare are going through, because it just sounds great. And that I got to say, that's one thing I will say about analog gear. It's a lot of it's kind of set and forget, you know, especially when you've got multiple pieces of outboard and whatnot. You can just have certain things set up. You know, this is my kick channel, this is my snare channel, this is my 2-bus. And you just send stuff there, and you don't have to fucking sit there and go through a million presets. You just twist the knob, sound good, fucking leave it.
Yeah. I always wonder if that's there's a glass half full way of looking at gear and saying, you know, you plug it in, it works. And then the glass half empty of if it is, I can't actually change a lot of the things that I would like to change on this thing. So, you know, but you're given your limitations, and this is how to get work done. I remember being able to do albums very fast, given that we only had this number of things to patch in, and that's it. You don't got infinite whatever. And sometimes that was the way to get an album done in time.
Well,
you know,
yeah,
was just to have
necessity's the mother of invention. If you're stuck, sometimes those limitations are what breed creativity. I mean, like, that's the thing. I think was it Don Headley said it the best. It said, you know, if they'd done Hotel California on digital, they'd still be arguing about it. You know, You know what I mean? So I mean,
probably
there's that. I mean, like, they're just having too many choices really kills creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the Warriors movie, and at the very end, where that and you listen to that guitar tone, and you're like, there's no way that guitar wasn't just plugged right into the console. Maybe there's a distortion box or something. Yeah. But the guy said, hey, I got an idea. Let's record it, and you know, maybe that they did that on purpose. I don't know. But that just goes to show that I don't care what your gear is, but if you got a good song in you, it's gonna come out.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, that is the thing. And here's the thing. I mean, like, we do mix reviews on Monday, and we get a lot of guys sending stuff in, and you know, sometimes we hear some really good mixes and some really shit songwriting, and then sometimes we hear some really great songwriting with some shit mixes. I'd rather listen to the good song though. You know?
Oh yeah, the Misfits proved that over and over and over and over again, that you can have some songs that people like, and they don't care what the hell it sounds like. Well, they'll keep buying it over and over.
Well, yeah, the ultimate, you know, example of that was Louie by the Kingsmen. I'm like, that was a shit recording by any stretch of the imagination. If you listen closely, you could even hear the drummer yell "fuck" when he drops a stick, like right after the guitar solo, and then the singer comes in at the wrong time. It's like ultimate garage band recording. They did that to get on a cruise ship or something like that, and you can tell it's like basically the band is like situated around a mic, and the singer's just yelling up like this. You know what I mean? But it worked. And it was a great vibe, and it worked, and it sold and sold and sold and sold and sold. So yeah, don't get too caught up on gear and fidelity and all the rest of shit. Sure, it's great, but a good song is going to trump all that shit every single time. Yeah,
it's you know when you were talking before about using a gate, I did something really like that in the 70s. I actually mentioned it in my audio expert book. I wonder if people you were talking about got it from my book. We were doing a funky jingle, I think it was. We had a jingle production company. This was 1976, I think. And I played 16th notes on my bass, just steady, following the chords, and keyed a Keypex gate off the kick drum. And it was really punchy. It came out, like Tower of Power. I mean, it's incredibly punchy sounding, perfectly in sync. So that's a good use. I like that. We should talk about that in a future episode, creative things that mixing engineers do. Because, a real mixing engineer is also part producer, unless you have a big budget and a separate producer. And there's lots of clever things that can be done beyond just, okay, now the guitar sounds good. Okay, now the drums are at the right volume. And that would be I think, a good topic for a future discussion.
Yeah, don't let Steve Albini hear this.
Ah! Oh, great. Now Steve Albini's going to hate me. Jesus Christ. That's okay. I was never a big Nirvana fan anyway. All right, everybody, that's it for another episode of Don't Get Mad, Get Evidence, the audio roundtable where we try and look at things, based on evidence and not absolute bullshit. So bottom line here is don't waste a shit ton of money on your cables. You're just going to be taken for a ride. And no, you didn't win anything if somebody mentions you in the comments from Text Me on Telegram. That also, too, is a scam. Don't send them any money. Seriously, please. Ethan and Pipeline, thank you so much for being on the show. These are an awful lot of fun. If you guys have some suggestions for some future episodes you'd like to see, leave a comment below because we'd love to hear from you. And we'll try to be back next month for another episode. Thanks again for being on the show, guys.
All right, thanks a lot.
See you guys.